Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today, we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. We have been together for 16 years and married for 10. 3 daughters. The oldest was adopted by me after marriage. About 6 years ago, while on the laptop we shared, I saw messenger messages that shook me. I wasn't snooping. She was still logged into Facebook on the laptop. A message came through while I was using the laptop and I saw the notification and message content. It instantly sent me into freakout mode. There were 3 guys. One was openly and actively flirting, insulting me, our marriage, telling her she settled, he was better, you get it. She did say she was married, but she also responded to some of the messages with laugh emojis and such. The second guy was someone she was messaging at around 3 a.m. for a while. Almost every night. The conversations that I could see didn't appear to be inappropriate. I was just bothered by the fact that she would message another guy in the middle of the night while I was asleep. I did look him up by name, so I knew what he looked like. This matters because at one point, a few months later, we were out to eat on a date night. He also happened to be there, in a small town. I sat across the table and watched them continuously glance at one another for almost 10 minutes before I finally asked if she'd rather go sit at the bar with him. She did not look in his direction again. The third man was someone she agreed to never speak to or see again. During this period, I spiraled into depression. I was afraid she was cheating. I began running her bubble baths after she got out of work, massages, dates, etc., trying to show her I loved her. I also attempted a conversation concerning my fears and how much what I was seeing hurt me. She shut down any and all conversation surrounding the topic. Finally, I hit a breaking point. One night after having the conversation rejected again, I literally got down on my knees crying and begged her to go to marriage counseling. She looked down at me, said, "Get the fuck up," and walked back into the house. That moment absolutely devastated me. It's still the most painful memory I have of our marriage. But I stayed. I stayed because we had kids and a house and I loved her. I was hurt, but I loved her. I began to believe she was cheating. Our sexual life was life support at its best. Maybe once a month if I was lucky. A few months later, she told me she was pregnant. I was so afraid I wasn't the father. When our youngest was born, I considered a DNA test. I was terrified to know the truth. I never got one, but the older our daughter got, the more she resembled me. I believe she is my daughter. Fast forward a few years, a pandemic is setting in, our issues never got resolved, I'm silently suffering from depression and am honestly hoping at that point I'd die in my sleep. Have a heart attack. Anything that wasn't suicide, so my girls would get the life insurance policies I had and I'd finally get peace. A female friend of mine I'd known since childhood reached out to me over a pretty dark meme I posted and asked if I was okay and if I needed to talk. I blew it off with a joke, but she knew. She persisted. She was the first person in my adult life who asked me if I was genuinely okay. I cried. I didn't cry when I got back from Iraq. When my grandparents died and later, when my mom died, I was able to hold it together. But having someone be kind to me broke me down. For so long, it felt like as long as I was performing and making money, I was tolerated. As long as I didn't bring up the things that bothered me or made me unhappy or angry, it was quiet. We became friends and eventually talked on the phone daily. We did not develop a romantic relationship. We did not develop a sexual relationship. We lived over an hour apart, and I was either at work or at home every night. No question. We never met in person. I realize it was inappropriate to use her as a therapist. I recognize it is not okay to maintain an opposite-sex friendship without disclosing that to my wife. At the time, I didn't realize that. I honestly didn't believe I was doing anything wrong because things never veered into the inappropriate conversation area. All calls were made from my phone. There were no apps, calls were in the call logs on phone bills, and no attempt was ever made to hide anything. It's no excuse, just an explanation. During these years, my wife and I had grown apart. We did not communicate. I began sleeping on the couch as the baby slept in the bed with her, which I did for the next 5 years. As I was cleaning my car one day, she came over and saw a message on my phone from my friend. She asked, "Who is ____?" Immediately, I became irritated because I knew exactly where she would go with this affair, and the idea was ridiculous. I told her she was my friend and we talked sometimes. She asked how often, and here is where my big fuck-up comes into play. I lied. I said that we hardly talked. I should not have said that. I knew I had nothing to hide. I had just become so tired of the fighting, stress, and worry that I wanted to avoid this fight. Still not okay. I own that. It's on me. She decided to pull the phone bills and confronted me a few nights later. She told me she knew I was having an affair. She knows I cheated. They called me every name in the book and I finally exploded. Everything I never got the chance to say to her came out. All the ways I felt hurt, the sadness, the suspicion of her cheating years before, even being worried my daughter might not be mine, it all came out. The next few months were bad. She began drinking heavily. I told her family and friends that I beat her, I forced myself on her, and I abused her emotionally, every terrible, awful thing someone could do to another. I did not know this at the time. I have only recently found this out. But this summer was the worst of our lives. I tried to show her I loved her. I took her on expensive dates, started making repairs around the house, spent more time with the girls, and tried to be more attentive to her emotionally. All it seemed to do was make her angrier. It got worse. Finally, in October, she decided to move out. I made it clear that we would not sleep with other people during our separation. I asked her to at least stay in the school district. Instead, she moved almost 40 minutes away. She signed a 1-year lease on a condo. She told me we would take that time to work on the relationship. She moved out and the girls stayed home with me. They have lived with me since October, with her having the 2 youngest for a handful of sleepovers. About 3 weeks after she moved out, she told me she wanted to divorce. No child support either way, no spousal support, 50-50th shared parenting. We fought on and off, some of them being pretty bad. We also had good moments when we would broach the idea of fixing things. Here we are, around the 3rd week of February. The conversation is going well and we begin to seriously discuss reconciliation. I asked if she had been with anyone. She said yes. 2 men. One was back in January at a friend's party. She was very drunk. He used a condom. It was one time. The second was after a particularly bad fight. She went to a bar in town, let a stranger take her home, and spent the night with him. She said it was one time, she only stayed because she was drunk and didn't have a ride back to her car. She said he also used a condom. This was incredibly painful to hear. I hadn't been with anyone. No dates. No hookups. Just my daily life as a single dad. There has not been one single night since she moved out that at least one of the girls wasn't home. I tried to be understanding. I had questions. She became uncomfortable answering them, shut down the conversation, and started one of the biggest fights we have had to date. It wasn't until the day after this fight that we filed for legal separation and dissolution. Communication was reduced to email for a few days. After we had a chance for everyone to calm down, we decided to discuss fixing things. We met for dinner. It was awkward at first, but conversation eventually came, and we had a relatively relaxing time. As we were leaving, that conversation was broached. I asked again and begged again to just be honest, and I'd try to work through it. This time, though, the answers were much different. There were still only 2 other men. The first person she began talking to was on Facebook, not at a party. They slept together roughly 5 times. He only used a condom the first time. This went on for about 3 weeks. The second man, the one-night standby from the bar, actually lived right across the street from the bar. She didn't have to stay because she didn't have a ride to her car. It was downstairs. She chose to spend the night with him. She also had sex with him roughly 5 times, only using a condom the first time. The last time she slept with him was about 2 days before she mentioned reconciliation initially. Since then, she says there's been no one and no contact with either of those 2 men. She lied to me about all of it the first time, and that made it hurt worse. A lot worse. She wants to fix things and become a family again, but I don't feel that I can trust her. She says we were separated, so it's not cheating, but it hurts like it is. I can't look past it. Not yet, at least. I suppose that's the definition of irony. So, Reddit, am I being selfish for feeling hurt, or am I being foolish for wanting to fix this? I need honest opinions because I know that between my love for her and my hurt over what happened, I'm not seeing clearly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.